Welcome to my PowerPoint on Powercreep. So let's actually get into what Powercreep is. So sometimes Powercreep is something minor. It's like one mana, one stat based on cards that we've seen in the past. A great example is Spy Mistress. It combines the stat line of Twisted Worgen, which is +1 mana over the original classic card in Worgen Infiltrator. Of course, Twisted Worgen, terrible card, never actually seen play. Worgen Infiltrator did see a little bit of play in Classic, and of course, when Spy Mistress came in the game, it came alongside a Stealth Rogue package, and of course the Stealth Rogue package was strong enough to make Worgen Infiltrator see play. However, Spy Mistress is still a 3-1, compared to Worgen Infiltrator being a 2-1. This is direct power creep, as I like to call it. It's interesting to think about how cards like this have existed for a long time in this game, and that's natural. Power creep will always exist in card games. It's how you get, new cards to be interesting. But it's very weird how it's not really brought up. How, in the early eras of Hearthstone, how power creep would happen constantly to the way that it is now. Hearthstone nowadays is so unbelievably power crept to the 2015 to 2019 era of Hearthstone that it's insane, is all I can really say. Spy Mistress as a card, yeah, it has +1 attack over Worgen Infiltrator, but it actually was so powerful because of +1 attack that it actually saw play in a deck that didn't revolve around Stealth and Odd Rogue. It's just such a powerful 1-drop to deal 1 mana, deal 3 to your opponent. It's very powerful. But let's look at some other cards. So Classic, of course, is where we get a lot of baseline minion stats that we now see in the game. It's typical to call something like a Bloodfen Raptor or a Razor, right, or a River Croc or a Chillwind Yeti, things like that, because they have stat lines that were in Classic Hearthstone. Of course, a Bloodfen Raptor is a 2-mana 3/2 minion that most of the times nowadays is going to have an effect. Of course, specifically, but Bloodfen Raptor was a beast. So I'm going to talk about another 2-mana 3/2 beast that is just a direct upgrade to Bloodfen Raptor, and that is Crackling Razormaw. Crackling Razormaw, it has been very powerful in its lifespan in Hearthstone. Being able to adapt a friendly beast is of course very good, but having a very good body, which is, the 2-mana 3/2 stat line, is very efficient. Being a beast makes it so it has a lot of the synergies, and it just is a direct upgrade to Bloodfen Raptor. A lot of cards technically aren't direct upgrades because they don't have the exact same traits or things of these other cards. Then a card that is, relatively speaking, a direct upgrade, yes, you can make the argument it's not, blah, 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 I'm not going to get into that, is Painted Canvassaur. Whereas Crackling Razormaw is a 2-mana 3/2 beast, same as Bloodfen Raptor. It can only target 1 minion with its effect. To effectively give it a random bonus effect, it's a little bit different. It's overall a little bit stronger than whatever. But Painted Canvassaur hits all of your beasts instead of only one beast. This is effectively direct upgrade over Crackling Razormaw. This is the way that card games go. You'll have a card that directly is an upgrade over another card, and then 7 full years later, which is the time period between these Razormaw and Canvassaur, you got a new card that is directly better. Is this bad? I don't think so. I think that power creep is a fine thing for video games. It lets you have more powerful effects, it lets you do more powerful things as time goes on, and it lets you just have fun with the game and play fun cards. The issue is when you get to some things that are really, really disgusting, like we'll talk about in a little bit. This one is more of a one that hits home for me, so... But sometimes they print cards in other classes that have incredibly similar effects to each other, but they're stronger because they're either cheaper, they have easier conditions, they have better stats, or they have better tribes. Many of those types of things. They do more damage, etc. This example, I chose Starving Buzzard and Toyboat. This is one of the most egregious examples that you can talk about in this game, especially in recent year. Of course, Starving Buzzard is a 10-year-old card, so it doesn't make sense that it would be power crept eventually, right? But it's a little awkward that it was power crept in 3 different ways. It was power crept by having a better body, by being a 2/3. It is still a 2-mana summon a tribe minion to draw a card. However, it's a better tribe. Pirates are just the best tribe in Hearthstone. They have been the best tribe for a long, long time, and they are significantly better than beasts. And, of course, it's a rogue card. Rogue is a better class than Hunter in Hearthstone's history. It just has been. It's not really a biased take. It just has been stronger overall than than Hunter has, especially in Wild. And that's where Starving Buzzard is. It's a wild card. So it really does tell you, wow. Of course, Toy Boat is significantly better. This, again, is fine for the game when you have things like this happen, right? It's sad, don't get me wrong. I'm definitely sad by this happening, but it is fine for the game. It allows there to be different strategies that are implemented in the game that have different concepts that you wouldn't really see otherwise, because you might think, oh, well, you know, Starving Buzzard, that's a Hunter card. I can't really use that in Rogue, right? But if you print the card that's similar and stronger to match today, the game of today, it does happen. This also happens a lot of the time when you have new classes being introduced. Of course, Death Knight is the newest class in the game. It came out in 2022 at the end of the year, so it hasn't even been in the game for 2 full years yet. They released it at the end of the year, which meant that they had to implement stronger cards into the design of the class to make up for that. Because, you know, at least unlike Demon Hunter, where Demon Hunter came at the beginning of the year, so it was in a 4-set format rather than a 6-set format like Death Knight. So they give it cards that are just kind of better than cards that existed in other classes. We can look at Remorseless Winter and Consecration as examples. They're both 4 mana, do 2 damage to all enemies, but Remorseless Winter also draws you a card and has a spell school. I think Consecration has a holy spell school, actually, but I got this off of online, so my bad. It has a spell school that is roughly as synergistic as holy to Paladin, actually, but it draws a card. It does come with the condition of being a frost rune, but as we know, 1 runes don't really matter very often. They just make like a million rainbow support decks, so it doesn't really matter. Very awkward. This is pretty common. This will happen to every class that's introduced into the game. Eventually, we will get Monk, and eventually, we will get Evoker. We got Demon Hunter, and Demon Hunter had the same thing. They had Spectral Sight, which is 2 mana draw 2, with not much of a condition. And, you know, people compared it to Arcane Intellect, which was, you know, 3 mana draw 2 at the time. That still is, actually, but still. This is what happens, right? New classes get introduced. They have to have cards that are as powerful as cards are today, so if they'll take things that were in other classes and make them more powerful as a really easy way to produce more cards that the class desperately needs. Then we get to play patterns. So play patterns are hard to talk about. A lot of the times, you know, decks don't really play that similarly. Like, yeah, aggro decks are going to play aggressively, but most aggro decks don't really play the same. Before the last few years where every aggro deck is swarm based, but you know, I'm not going to talk about that. You know, not every control deck plays the same, not every combo deck plays the same, right? So play patterns are things that usually you don't see that often across different, you know, classes, but there are, you know, things like micro combos like that, you know, very strong 2-turn combos that exist. So in the past, we had Samuro and Apotheosis. Of course, this is a 7 mana combo to get a 3/7 with Lifesteal, Rush, and then Frenzy, deal damage equal to this minion's attack, so 3 to all enemy minions. This was nerfed. Yup. 7 mana, this was nerfed, because it was considered too strong as a combination board removal, minion, and like full heal, because you'd almost always full heal from this effect. It was deemed too strong. So they nerfed it. Okay, then they eventually printed Unleash Fel and Silvermoon Arcanist in the same expansion. These cards, of course, did the same thing. You would deal 3 damage to all enemy minions, and to all enemies, because it also go face, and you would heal from it. And that was deemed too strong and nerfed. Okay. You know, they did it again, and it got nerfed, so surely they won't do it again, right? Okay, they print Crescendo in Festival of Legends. It was 3 mana at the time, and it was seen as like a kind of combo finisher for this fatigue package that they were doing as like it can deal some damage and it would clear the board. You know, that's what it was made for. Then you fast forward to Showdown in the Badlands, and Popgar is printed. At the time, Popgar only reduced Fel spells by 1, so it's like, okay, you couldn't really do much with it. You know, I think Crescendo still cost 3 even by that point. I don't remember correctly when it was buffed to 2, but still, right? So, okay, you could have done something together, whatever. Then, Popgar was specifically buffed to discount by 2. So now you have the combination of Crescendo and Popgar, which, of course, guess what? It clears your opponent's board, it heals you, and this time it goes face. However, instead of only dealing 3 damage face, like Unleash Fel, it does lethal damage, because you just copy crescendos, and you deal a lot of damage to your opponent's face, and it costs 0. And this hasn't been nerfed yet. This has been in the game for a couple expansions now. It wasn't that great, don't get me wrong, until, you know, Perils in Paradise, because they had, oh gosh, what's it called? Typo Pupil. But the fact that this play pattern exists, even though they've gone out of their way to remove it from 2 other classes, is not good. This is just direct power creep over the game. That the fact that this play pattern still exists, but it was tried to be removed from older things. It's yeah, interesting game design, Blizzard, if you ask me. Okay, so let's talk about another situation of, you know, backwards play patterns. So back before Leroy was Hall of Fame, you know, because he definitely was not allowed to be in standard forever, let's be honest with you, this card. The last deck to really make use of him was a Tempo Rogue deck that used Waggle Pick. And Waggle Pick, of course, if you don't know, is a 4-mana 4/2 weapon. Death Rattle, return a friendly minion to your hand, it costs 2 less. So the idea was you would have Leroy, you would break the pick, and then you would hit your opponent in the face. That's 10 damage on that turn. Bring Leroy back to your hand, then you could play him again, because he would only be 3 mana, and then you could either buff him, or you could save him for a later turn to do another Waggle Pick turn. You could play multiple Leroys in one turn, buff him, and deal a lot of damage to your opponent's face. Yep. Yeah, that's really fun. It's really a lot of interactive gameplay to take a lot of damage from a charge minion, right? So they obviously removed Leroy for the game, because that was really toxic and not fun to play against, because you took a lot of damage from hand that you couldn't deal with because of charge. And, you know, they didn't print charge cards for a long time because of that play pattern. And then they decided, okay, let's print Painter's Virtue, which also, you know, does pretty decent damage. It'll deal 6 damage for 4 mana, but it'll also buff your hand. You know what cards are really good with hand buff? Leroy Jenkins. Oh, that means let's put Leroy in the core set. Yeah, I mean, the instant you see the slide, you already know where it's going. This is obviously, again, a very toxic play pattern, one that they removed from the game in the past, where you were taking a lot of damage from hand uninteractively because of a card like Leroy that had charge in classes that shouldn't be able to do that. They just shouldn't be able to do that. That's, like, not what they're built around. That's not how they're balanced around. And yeah, Paladin's not balanced around having cards like Leroy and having cards like Salcy Deckhand get super buffed and then have charge. And guess what? It's been really, really, really strong ever since. Again, another example of play patterns that have been removed from the game, but brought back and are incredibly powerful and shouldn't exist. It's another form of power creep. That's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is a little more experimental of a type of video for me. Usually I just go over like things about the game, not actual like things in the game themselves that are like meta. I usually talk about like things that are like cards, stuff like that, not really meta parts of the game. So if you enjoyed, you know, comment, leave a like, tell me what I got right, what I got wrong down below, any things that I missed that I should have spoken on. Of course, power creep is a lot more nuanced than what I was just getting at. I was just showing a couple examples of like different ways power creep affects the game, but yeah, there's so much power creep in this game nowadays. It's crazy. That's gonna be it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb. They grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do.